Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. So guys, we are here with a new show for you today. So we are going to replace the separate look at the free practice shows on a Friday and just cover that in our roundup on qualifying. And instead, on Fridays, we are going to give you the latest F1 news in the F1 Weekly News. So guys, don't forget, if you are new here, you can subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification, and you can keep up to date with all our latest content. But guys, let's get into that news. So, this week has been, we have waited for all the action to come after the summer break, and it has all pretty much happened in this week. Starting off with the Spanish Grand Prix making it onto the 2020 calendar, and subsequently the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim being axed from it. We have released a video just earlier today at 2 PM where me and Ashley go through our pros and cons of the circuit and what we feel, but I think generally as a whole, F1 fans are sad to be losing Hockenheim and a German GP from the calendar. Moving on to yesterday, and yesterday was kind of frantic. We've been waiting all summer, speculating kind of, would Bottas stay, would Bottas go, would Ocon get the Mercedes seat, where would Ocon go if he didn't get the Mercedes seat, and it was confirmed yesterday guys, Valtteri Bottas stays at Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton is very happy with this, and I kind of have a feeling that he probably had a large part to play in this. They are teammates, they get on well. Bottas helps deliver Mercedes the Constructors' Championship. It makes sense for all parties. When Red Bull are catching up, and they've already had 6 years at the top of the game in Formula 1, assuming that they win both the drivers and constructors this year, which would take a pretty big effort for that not to happen. I think they're just going to play it safe. They've got a great team environment. Everyone works together really well at Mercedes. They've got a kind of well-oiled machine. Why change it when you're on top? And then that leaves Ocon going to Renault and Nico Hülkenberg being replaced. Now, it is great to see Esteban Ocon back in an F1 car. I thought he was unlucky to lose his Force India seat last year. I thought he showed great potential. Obviously, he lost to Sergio Perez in both years, but he was still very competitive within that car and certainly showed promise of being at least a very good solid driver on the F1 circuit. And I think if you've watched the mid-season ratings views, you both know what me and Ash think of whether Lance Stroll was good enough to replace Esteban. So Renault is a really strong move for him, and I think it's a team environment where he doesn't have the big pressure that the Mercedes seat would have brought with him to perform like a Gasly has crumbled under. But they're still a team that are pushing to try and get back at the top. And so I think he's been released from Mercedes now, and so he can be part of that Renault project, hoping to get things right when the 2021 rule changes come into play. And Renault have pumped a lot of money into this project, and if you keep pumping into money of it, obviously they've swanned a lot of it down the drain, but I feel like it is going to come to the fore, and Renault will be getting more to the top end of that grid by the end of things. They are too good a manufacturer in F1's history to stay dwindling where they have gone to this season, starting off with maybe a strong second half of the season this weekend at Spa. Where does that leave Nico Hülkenberg? Now, obviously not confirmed. He wants to stay in F1. Most likely seat is probably that Haas seat. Obviously Roman Grosjean's 6 DNF so far, so he would have to have a pretty special end to the season for Haas to want to keep him. I think their partnership has probably just gone a little bit beyond repair. Some fault on Grosjean's part, some fault not on Grosjean's part, but just the Haas move hasn't worked out how he would have hoped when he went there. So Hülkenberg could be going to that seat. I personally feel he's going to leave this decision as late as possible, because if Albon doesn't perform in that Red Bull seat, I think Nico Hülkenberg is someone Red Bull would seriously look at and consider, especially as he's a free agent now with losing that Renault seat. And it would almost be their Bottas style move to kind of help them get solid point in the Constructors while pumping everything into Max Verstappen to challenge for the Drivers' Championship title. So I think those are his two main options in F1. And if he chooses to leave F1, probably endurance racing. Obviously he is a previous Le Mans 24-hour race winner, and DTM in the touring cars probably could be a really good place for him to go if he chooses to step away from Formula 1. So that probably rounds up the chaos of yesterday in terms of drivers going everywhere. But before all that news broke, there was also that kind of sent a little bit of a Twitter meltdown in terms of Marcus Ericsson will be at Spa this weekend, and people were speculating, does that mean that Alfa have dropped Giovinazzi, or at least dropping him for the weekend to give Marcus Ericsson a shot in the car? And I can tell you guys, if you don't know already, that is not the case. Kimi Raikkonen has pulled a muscle, and it's touch and go whether he will be performing this weekend in the car. So Marcus Ericsson has been brought in as backup, as he is the reserve driver for Alfa Romeo. So no real drama, it's just a sensible precautionary decision. Raikkonen might not be fit to drive, so they've got to bring in Ericsson as a backup. Kimi Raikkonen's in typical Kimi fashion, I think when asked about the injury, I think his response was sport, injuries, getting old. True detailed and informative form of Kimi Raikkonen. He really does know how to go in depth in those answers. But I think that's why we all love Kimi. He is to the point. Now probably getting on to more technical roundup for the news for you guys. We have 2 power units coming with upgrades this weekend, major ones in Mercedes and in Red Bull. Mercedes were only on their 2nd power unit, so they've brought this to both their drivers this weekend without any grid penalties, which is positive. Hamilton talking about it, you don't know if it's that typical Mercedes bluff where they're going, oh, this won't do anything, it's only a small upgrade. Nah, it won't do much, and suddenly their performance is even better than it was before. But Hamilton reckons it will improve about 0.05 in terms of lap time speed. It is just mainly an efficiency upgrade, just improving the efficiency of that engine. But we will wait to see whether they are just bluffing again in typical Mercedes fashion. The Red Bull one, they are really bigging up their hopes for this. Obviously Honda improvements throughout the season compared to the McLaren days with Red Bull have been huge. They've really caught up, and it is a competing engine again on the F1 grid, which obviously got those 2 wins in the last 4 races before the summer break. So they are really bigging up their chances of doing well here. They reckon that this power unit upgrade puts them on a par with Mercedes, but because they had already used their designated power units for the season before taking a grid penalty in both cars, Alex Albon has taken that penalty and will be testing out that new power unit this weekend, and Max Verstappen will be running the old spec power unit because I presume that they think that they can get a result in Spa, so they don't want to damage him with a grid penalty. So I presume if it goes well this weekend, fully expect to see Max sporting that new power unit in Monza and taking that grid penalty next week. The kind of baby teams within that of Toro Rosso and Williams and Racing Point, obviously using Mercedes and Red Bull engines respectively. I believe drivers, I think it's rumoured that Lance Stroll, George Russell will take a hit on that Mercedes power unit upgrade this weekend. So qualifying could be interesting because there could be a lot of grid penalties with these power unit changes. And I believe in the Toro Rosso, Kvyat will be taking the new Honda power unit. for there, which makes sense. You don't want to... Gasly is low enough on confidence as he is. He probably wants a really good weekend, a really good race weekend, to kind of get himself back in the groove of things after obviously that summer break disappointment of losing the Red Bull seat. So yeah, he doesn't want to be given a grid penalty for a new power unit in his first race back. So guys, since recording this, actually I have the confirmed teams who are going to take grid penalties this weekend. So it was Albon, Kvyat, like I said, in the Red Bull powered engines, but it wasn't George Russell. It will be Lance Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo, Hulk and Carlos Sainz who will be taking those penalties this weekend. Thought I'd just add that into you so I could keep you up to date. A few more tech upgrades. The biggest one coming was a new front wing from Racing Point. Obviously more less downforce front wing, because these next two circuits you'll see a lot of the teams over the next 2 weekends bringing low downforce setups, because they are just so quick circuits and you are spending a lot of time in the high gears. And so yeah, you certainly don't want a high downforce car for Spa and Monza. Guys, that pretty much rounds up the weekly news. Give us a thumbs up if you like that video. If you like the idea of an F1 weekly news show, let us know in the comments below. We will try our best to get all the roundup of the news, get it to you guys in kind of a smaller bite-sized form, so you can keep up to date with all that's happening in the F1 paddock and outside of the track. So guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel below. Click that bell notification. You can keep up to date with all our latest content. And guys, comment below, like I said. Let us know what that weekly news, what you think, how the kind of new power units are going to be affected. What do you make of the Bottas and Ocon switch? Obviously I did a reaction video yesterday when it went live, but now we've had time for it to calm down a little bit more. I suppose people can think a little bit more and start to discuss what this means going forward into 2020. But guys, hope you enjoyed the video. As always, F1 fans, keep racing.